So, Gabe, the question was posed to us, is Vitali Klitschko, the 2009-10 version, better than the first edition? Let's compare this Klitschko we saw this past weekend against the guy who fought Lennox Lewis in 2004 and gave a valiant effort and was really the beginning of the rehabilitation project and reclamation job of Klitschko. Which is the better version of Dr. Iron Fist?
Well, I think they were both fighting kind of the same level of opposition and waiting for an elite. I tend to think this Vitali is better, though. He seems more relaxed. He seemed a little quicker on his feet, a little quicker with his hands. He seemed to be much more lumbering and would go straight to you. Particularly in the Lewis fight, really open for the uppercut. Now, you don't really see him get hit with that punch. He kind of is always pulling back and moving around. You don't really see him against a 6'5" dude like Lennox Lewis anymore. But I would tend to think the guy now knows himself a lot better, has a lot more experience, and has still got the same great chin. And his reflexes, everything seemed pretty good. At least they did in this fight.
Well, that's the variable. Strength of schedule again. They're not facing any more Lennox Lewises because those guys don't exist anymore. I think the level of opposition has something to do with it. But again, I'm not saying that he is like this guy. I'm just going to draw the parallel. George Foreman. George Foreman, as a younger man, when he was the bully out of the 5th Ward of Houston, when he was knocking people out, he was a much more physical, stronger bully in his early 20s and early 30s, as opposed to the guy that came back selling you hamburger grills who didn't have the physical ability. But guess what? Boxing IQ and the ability, again, you said, to relax. I think he knows himself much better. I think he's much more secure. So you have that comparison between the physical apex against the guy coming into his own from a psychological standpoint. And boxing is such a mental game. You talk to anyone that's been in there, that sometimes you wish you had your youth, but you now have the wisdom. And I think that's where Klitschko is, that I think that at this age, heading into his late 30s, he may not have the fastball or the stamina or the physical attributes he had, let's say, 7-8 years ago, but he's much more secure. And I say this of both Klitschko brothers. The meltdowns of the past, when they went all 3 Mile Island against Layman Brewster, against Corey Sanders, against Ross Purity, you know what? I don't hold that against them in perpetuity. I think they have both grown. I think they're much more relaxed, and they have a boxing foundation. I think now that they are much more together from a mental standpoint, and in addition to the fact they're not exactly facing the Mount Rushmore of heavyweights. There's a lot of factors that are contributing to their late success here.
Yeah, without question. I mean, the opposition there's no resistance right now. Most guys get in there and they kind of freeze, but that's not the Klitschko's fault. It's their job to bring it. And both of them have two of the highest knockout percentages in the sport. I think actually Vladimir might have the highest knockout percentage. They're doing their job against these guys. And where Vitali is, being very relaxed and completely understanding all his attributes and how to use them perfectly, I think that's where Vladimir is heading towards. And I think we're probably coming to the end, certainly, of Vitali's career. But I think we've got at least another 4 years left of Vladimir, who is at the top of his game. His technique is now meeting his experience, and he's becoming more relaxed and understanding himself. I think both these guys can hit a stretch run, maybe Vitali 2 more years, 4 more years of Vladimir, and no one beats them.
And Gabe, I know this is going to kill some American critics. These guys are Hall of Famers. I don't care what anyone says. If you go by who are the top 20 heavyweights of all time, maybe they're not top 5 or 10, but I think it's hard to name more than 15 heavyweights on any given day that are better than them. I mean, if you look at consistency, you look at lineage, you look at the knockout percentage, was among the highest ever, you look at the length of their title runs, and you could say all you want, that they haven't faced anybody. Folks, look at the run that Larry Holmes fought throughout the first 4 or 5 years of his heavyweight title run. Joe Louis, they flat out said it was the bum of the month club. Mike Tyson beat a lot of coked out Don King heavyweights that had no shot whatsoever. Lennox Lewis, his most satisfying victory came over a very old shot-faded Mike Tyson. So if you look at it in that range and scope, take away Muhammad Ali in that era of heavyweights, there's never really been a great era of heavyweights across the board. And that's my point, is if you just look at it from a black and white perspective, put away your biases and prejudice of the past, the Klitschkos, they're getting their fists encased in Canastota. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah, without question. Particularly if they keep this run going and they don't, they go for a few more years, like I just said, and then retire, kind of undefeated in the back end of their career. There's just no question that they're elite fighters, and you could place them, I think, as much, if not more, than any other fighter in any division. You could place them anywhere in history, and they would be a major problem.
There are not a lot of heavyweights throughout history that are built like power forwards, who know how to fight, who have an amateur background, who know how to box and have power. Yes, they've had some hiccups. But you know what, folks? If you want to hold that against them, what about Lennox Lewis? There's been a lot of heavyweights throughout history that have had some hiccups. Joe Louis hit the canvas 6 or 7 times. Not against the greatest punchers either, mind you.
Yeah, and you got to look at the career of Mike Tyson, who
Who did he beat?
Yeah,
Really?
he was the youngest undisputed heavyweight champion of all time. That's his major claim to fame, and he's on the Hall of Fame ballot right now. And I'm looking at him going, okay, that's his major attribute, but where's the elite win? He didn't beat, he didn't fight.
Razor Ruddock?
Yeah, he didn't fight Riddick Bowe. He fought Lewis when he was very old.
Larry Holmes, 3.5-year retirement.
Absolute meltdown against Evander Holyfield, and he lost to a 42-1 underdog. Is that first ballot Hall of Fame? I don't know. You definitely have to hold that against him. So you look at the Klitschkos. To me, I kind of judge it like the old-time fighters. I mean, maybe these guys don't fight as often, but the Klitschkos do fight pretty often, 3 or 4 times a year. And you can't really hold an early loss against them because it isn't how you lose sometimes, it's how you come back. That's when we find out who you really are. And they've come back beautifully.
And I'm going to say this right now. There have been some great brother combinations. The Canizales brothers, obviously. There was the McCrory brothers.
The Marquez brothers.
But if you take away the Marquez brothers, Rafa and Juan Manuel, who I believe are the #1 premier brother duo in the era of prize fighting across the board, I think the Klitschkos make a strong case for being #2. Both guys are the best heavyweights right now. And I think what ultimately works against them, unfortunately, that their best competition that they could face, they shared the same crib and bathtub as a kid. That ultimately is what's going to work against them, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. Because you look at the Marquez brothers, and they had tons of great competition in both of the divisions.
And in different weight classes.
Yeah, total classic matchups. And legendary Hall of Fame, fighters that they could take on. The Klitschkos just don't have that. And until maybe David Hayes steps up to the plate, and we don't even know what kind of heavyweight he really is. If he can push them to the limit, maybe that pushes them over the threshold. If they can get in some great fights with him, maybe Povetkin finally gets into the mix, and then people can actually get behind them, and you get that excitement factor mixed with a good rival that helps to really define the back end of their career. Maybe then people will get on the bandwagon. For me, first ballot Hall of Famers.
Wow, first ballot.
I think so.
Wow.
I think so. At this point, but I'd say that's
so
saying.
Wait, so Mike Tyson is kind of like, hey, you don't know if he gets that check mark yet, but the Klitschkos, the first time, 5 years after their retirement, are getting that X.
Well, that's saying if they do what I outlined, which is another 4 years of undefeated, another 2 years.
4 years, wow.
Well, for Vladimir, I think he could extend another 4 years. I know he's into his 30s, but look how well he takes care of his body. I think
American Tyson fans, send your email to Gabriel Montoya, because these views here are strictly on the left side of the couch, not on this side. I find that interesting. Mike Tyson is not a first ballot.
I didn't say that. I said I'm thinking about it.
But you're thinking very hard about it.
Yeah, I'm thinking very hard about it. What other accomplishment can you give him? He didn't have an elite win. He lost to one of the biggest. He has the biggest upset in not just boxing history,
sports
but
history.
Sports
42-1.
Yeah,
February 10th, 1990.
You got to give points for consistency, and not for that one accomplishment. And you do look at, okay, he's the youngest. That probably is not going to be beaten.
You think you look at most heavyweights from a historical perspective, from Joe Louis, take away Marciano, obviously, but even Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, maybe Lennox Lewis is not there. Most great heavyweights at the tail end of their careers, they start to become 500 fighters. They don't win all that often. Klitschko's, I'm telling you right now, folks, last 4 or 5 years, they may have lost 1 or 2 rounds combined in every fight. Again, they're not fighting Godzilla and King Kong, but you talk about consistency. What heavyweights as a duo at age 35, 36, 37, 38 are finishing up this strong? I think you're hard-pressed to find one.
Yeah, you are. I mean, I'll give it the caveat. They do need a defining fight. A Hay fight would be nice. An Adamic fight would be would be nice as well. To be first ballot, I'm not sure. They're definitely Hall of Famers. First ballot, it also depends on who's, who. It's a very small class, 5 guys. So it's going to be dependent on who's in that class with them.
And we shall see. History will ultimately be the judge. All right, that's it. Steve, Kim, Gabriel Montoya breaking down the Klitschko brothers.